Welcome back to Greenlight Cinema. It's so good to have you guys back with me. I'm doing Fargo Season 4, Episode 9. Yes, we're almost here to the series finale, and then I guess I'll be doing other reviews for things. But I'm so glad you guys are here. And here's my oldest, his little pumpkin. He actually did the imposter thing from a game, I forget what it's called. But, yeah, his is kind of peeling with paint and everything. Whoa. Oh boy. Whoa. Oh, yeah. Oh, it's rotting. I gotta toss this out in the trash. Alright, well, that's my review, I guess. Like and subscribe if you guys haven't already. I'm gonna go throw these pumpkins out. Ooh. Let's talk about this episode. So, you know, the episode's in black and white, which was pretty interesting. I like this type of thing. I'm into things that are like supposed to be there from the 50s or 40s, whatever, and they make it in black and white. And so I had no problems with this episode going into it. I was like, wow, this is really cool and very, very interesting. But it's got like a Wizard of Oz type spin on it, and we'll be getting into that. But it starts out, I thought was very interesting, like with season 2, only we see, it's like the American Crime History book, that blue book we seen in the beginning of, I believe it was episode 9 of Fargo season 2, and it's like ripped and torn and dismayed completely, it's like debris everywhere. This is all in color. And then it fades to black and white. We see I'm not sure. I know the actor's name's Corey Hendricks, so I'm just going to call him Corey Hendricks. So Corey has this Italian guy that we've never seen in his trunk, and like he's, you know, beating around or whatever. It kind of reminded me of the first episode of Fargo season 1 with Lauren Malbo driving. You hear that beating on the trunk. And he stops out the car and kind of lets that guy hit a cigarette, and they talk for a minute. He's trying to get information out of him. He's like, you know, that he's like, the scout Calamita went into that guy's shop, got a bunch of guns, so what are they for? What is he going to do with them? Who's he going to kill? He's getting like a little bit of information. He says Irish, and then he tapes them back up. But they stop at a gas station. He talks to this gas station guy for a little bit. And he was like, well, you know, you seen any Italian people around? And he was like, no. And he was like, can we stick by? And he's like, well, he don't really, you know, the governor really doesn't, you know, care, you know, much for black people, you know, 'cause the 50s and all that. It's like, oh, gosh. But he works out like a deal, though. He tells him, he's like, well, how about paint we need done? And he's like, sure, you know, he's like, I'll help you paint. He's like, if you mean me sit down and I watch you paint, then I'll work. You know, because this guy's like, hey, you're not just going to sit around my shop or this guy's shop and not do anything. And so that we see that, but also he lets the Italian guy out, and they both paint the fence together. Cut to, we see Corey and Corey Hendricks and that Italian guy. They get done painting the fence, and this guy starts talking about something about turtles. I'm not really sure where he's going with it. I think this was like kind of like a Wizard of Oz reference or something. It's been a while since I've watched it. I haven't watched it in a while. I actually watched it with my oldest, I think, like a couple years ago. But I grew up with it, though. Like, Wizard of Oz was so much a big part of my life as in my early, like, when I was about like 5 or 4. Just I really got into movies. And then from there it was like Star Wars because it was re-released. But anyway, not talking about that. I'm talking about Fargo and its Wizard of Oz things and themes. So we have, while this guy's talking about turtles and whatever, we see that Calamita's pulled up at this gas station. Cut to, then we see Rabbi and Sancho. And I guess this is like liberal Kansas, Pluto. We're seeing a lot of monuments for things that say Pluto. And so it kind of feels like an out of this world type of reference. Like, you know, like again, like with the aliens or whatever. But, so they get to this place called the Barter Arms. I think it's like a boarding house. And, the woman there, she was like, you know, she's kind of just like a busybody, just in her book, and just kind of like, oh, you know, kind of this or that. Everyone's like really this way, that way, kind of like the Scarecrow from Wizard of Oz. It feels like, you know, well, you can either do this, or I can either be like this, or da-da-da. And so I felt like that was a little weird. It felt kind of weird and out of place to meet all these random assorted characters that we've not, you know, ever seen, and I'm pretty sure that they won't have like any bearing much on like the rest of the season since we just now got introduced to them. But I'm jumping ahead a little bit. So what happens basically is they get into this boarding house, and it's funny, like Satchel's like hungry like immediately, like he's like hungry throughout this whole episode. So I'm like, is he gonna have like some crazy growth spurt at the end of this season? And like he's just, anyway, I don't know. My thoughts and mine, it just went everywhere with this episode. So he says Rabbi told him that he's got money in town. Satchel. We could call him Mike, I think, by now, maybe. So he goes and to town and leaves Satchel there. He says there's some books, you know, read or whatever. And he gives him a knife before he leaves. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and I'm like, I wonder if this will come into play. Mike sees a wardrobe, and it's like kind of shaking. Sounds like it's got something or someone in it. But before that, he passes like a long hallway with these crazy wind-up stairs, and like he sees like this like guy that's got like, he's got like tubes and stuff going up to him, and like this guy's constantly working on him all the time, and it kind of freaks out Mike. And he's like, don't leave me here, you know, with that guy, and, you know, because Rabbi's like, I gotta go check on this money. Before he left, so he tells Mike. Mike meets this little dog. It's adorable, and its name is Rabbit. And Mike hangs on the Rabbit, and after Rabbi decides to go into town and leaves, the dog, and, the dog's like scratching the door, and he just like takes off, and Satchel runs after him, and he like runs upon this like salesman guy that's just kind of like saying just like this or that again, you know, along with someone else. I'm not sure what he's talking about, Texas and oil, and so we got these two interesting characters. And so Rabbi makes it into town. He gets to the place that once belonged possibly to him or his family or something. But he's like, he walks in, he's like, where's the wall at? And they're like, and the guy's like, oh yeah, that wall. And he's just like, and they kind of have like, you know, like, oh crap, that guy that owns the store now, he's like, me and my brother own it. I mean, he seems like a nice enough guy, but it's like, kind of feel bad for Rabbi. He's really stuck in this situation, so he don't do anything. He's pretty upset about it. We see him really, really worked up in this episode. This guy's had a lot of like kindness and been cool about a lot of things, but this episode he felt like he was like about on the verge to break constantly. And I mean, we've had some pretty intense things with his character, and so now he's found out that not only is the feed store no longer there, but the money's gone too. So it's like, gosh. He makes it back into town, or back to the boarding home, and him and Mike, he sees Mike's dog, and Satchel's dog, and Rabbit, and he sees Satchel talking to these two random guys, and he's just kind of like, you know, come with me or whatever, and he's probably like weary of all these, you know, random people. I'm not sure why I guess Satchel's just trying to fit in, which is interesting because it gets into the dinner scene. So then we get the dinner scene with the two sisters, and like both of them have like the giant like horns, like so they can hear. That was like I thought mostly like I guess all elderly women did it or elderly people did it, but I thought of like more of like war vets having it. Anyway, so they're like, why the whole time, and we're hearing like all these people's interesting stories. There's a preacher and his wife. I think his name's Preacher Roanoke or it sounded like Roanoke, and it reminded me of like a place in Virginia. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just thinking of something else. It's so interesting though. Their conversations, like there's like a prayer, and the old guy's like, "You're not doing it right. Let me tell you how a prayer goes." But basically, like the salesman's talking to Satchel, and Satchel's listening, and we have weird uncle guy and his niece. I guess I don't know. Look, it's all of a whole bunch of characters that look odd and out of place. So yeah, but salesman guy's talking about not fitting in anywhere, and it's really interesting. Like Satchel seems like he's very like intrigued what this guy's talking about. We see Rabbi kind of like anxious in bed, like he can't sleep or something. Meanwhile, like Sancho is sleeping like really good with his new little puppy, Rabbit, that's adorable, and so he's just hanging out the entire time, or so he's hanging out, kind of contemplating his next play. So cut to we see Rabbi and Sancho loading up in the car or whatever, and he tells him, he's like, "You can't bring the dog," and he's like, well, it'll cause too much attention with the barking and stuff. He makes a little excuse, and Rabbi, so he, I talked about him being like a little fussy, so he's kind of fussing at Satchel for bringing the dog along, but he's like, oh, whatever, and so he's driving into town, and he sees, I wanted to bring this up earlier, I'm not sure if I did or not, but this guy's like painting a sign, and like he, again, is neither here nor there, he don't have it finished, it just says the future. And he's like, well, the future's what? And the guy's like, what do you mean? He's like, I'm not like, I'm off, or I'm going to be working here in a little bit, and I'm not in any hurry. Just kind of, again, here or there. And he was like, well, it's not good letting people wait in suspense and not ever knowing for things. And he's like, wait for what? And the guy's just like, what's this guy's deal? Like, where'd he come from? Just yelling at me about anything. So they make it into the town that he needs to check out, and he tells Satcho to stay in the car with his little adorable puppy, and he does just that. While he goes in there, and they show the two guys that own the store, the brothers, I think, and he's like, oh yeah, that guy seemed mad about the wall. He knows. Like Rabbi sneaks up right behind him, and both of them, and like has a gun on both of them, and is asking them about the money, and they're like, look, sir, we don't have the money anymore, we have some of it left, and it would look like a handful of just dollar bills. I mean, it didn't really look like a whole lot. He said it was like 50,000 or something, I believe, that he left in there. I mean, which is a lot of money, if I'm not mistaken. He said $50,000.
Repeating something over and over is comedy.
They fly now.
I was like, golly, I believe that's a pretty good amount of money for 1950. That's like pulling a DB Cooper almost, kind of, and like, but because I would say that because he's like he could have escaped and no one ever knew or seen from him or Satcho again, possibly. Maybe the money might come back up. I don't know. We know that money has, disappeared and then came back up. Maybe, like I said, maybe the money's a little thing. Anyway, while he's in there trying to contemplate if he's going to kill these guys or not about the money, we see Satcho playing with the little puppy, and like we see this cop, and he's like, get out of the car, and he's like, I didn't do anything. Satchel's like, I've been just sitting here, and he's like, get out of the car. He's like, what are you doing? And thank goodness Rabbi pops up in just a nick of time and talks to the cop, and he's like, and I think it's interesting, everyone keeps asking him, what's your relationship to this boy? And he's like, he keeps saying guardian, or uses a different phrase for guardian, and finally he tells the cop, he's like, look, his dad was a war buddy of mine, and he died, and I just want to take care of his offspring, so I watch after him and everything. And so I thought that was kind of cool. Kind of really does feel like as this as this season unravels more, it feels like that he's like a brother or a father role to Satchel that like Satchel needed or didn't get out of Loy. I don't know. Maybe I'm just kind of overthinking all this, but so they go back to the barter and nothing happens there at the shop or with the cop. So they're packing up. Rabbi, he's got like a new plan forming. He hadn't really told Satchel or us, the audience, but he's got this new plan forming, and he's like, Satchel's like, I'm hungry again, and he says to him, he's like, okay, well, after dinner, he's like, we're gonna go, and he's like, why? Go where? And he was like, can I bring Rabbit with me? And he was like, no. He's like, all that thing does is just bark. And like Satchel doesn't complain this whole season, and I thought this was just like a neat little thing. I mean, because give this kid a break. And I have to say, for this child actor, I gotta say that he carried this episode. Like, this episode would have been completely boring, I felt like, or out of place or awkward without this child actor or Satchel, Mike, whatever his name is. I love this guy. Like, he's a good actor and very believable. He smacks the bed kinda, not very hard, but Rabbi's like, what's this about now? And he was like, well, it's my birthday, and for my birthday, I wanted just something. And it was a real, like, moment. And, Rabbi kind of chills out for a minute, and he runs downstairs, talks to that woman that's, like, a real busybody, and he's like, hey, do y'all have any, like, sweets or anything around here? And she's like, well, the sisters don't like sweets, so maybe there's a gas station or something around here. And he was like, well, it's the kid's birthday, and I just want to get him something. So he drives out to the gas station, the one that we first see in the beginning of the episode, or them painting. It's really interesting. Rabbi, after he leaves to go after Rabbi leaves to go get Mike like a little snack, he sees that the sign has been completely finished. And now he's like upset about what it says. And it's like, the future is now. And he was like, what does that mean? And he's like, well, the guy gives him kind of an either or type of thing again. Well, it could either be this or either be that. And he's like, maybe it's the end of my job. I don't know. He's like, I finished painting it, so I don't have any other work to do. Cut to, we see Rabbi getting to the gas station. And we see like a dead body laying over here. We see Corey's been shot, the guy, I can never remember his name. And we see Calamita. And Calamita somehow got the better of him. I don't know how he done it. Like, honest to goodness, they didn't show it. But so Calamita sees, comes after Rabbi, shoots him in the arm or something, and like this big, strong funnel cloud tornado. I mean, we start seeing all this wind pick up, and it's like, oh my gosh, like it looks like a big storm. And somehow, like, Calamita gets like sucked in. Or, like, he didn't even, like, move the entire time this huge funnel cloud's coming his way. And all of a sudden, he just, like, gets sucked up. And, like, we see, like, it reminded me of Lou or somebody that, like, looked up at the light in season 2 at the UFOs. Because that's what it reminded me of. It looked like, we see, like, this, like, beam of light, or it's like a light or, like, something. And Rabbi's doing this right here, and he gets like, we see him just like kind of spinning around a little bit. Like, I don't know if he survived. This is Fargo. I don't know how many people have survived twisters like that or been inside twisters. I don't think a lot of people have, especially this daggone thing, because it was gigantic. But it reminds me of season 1 at the end of that, where they had like a giant tornado with like fish. That was a tragic ending, which also had to do with the Supermarket King of Minnesota. Just saying, there's a couple of little things right there. But yeah, so cut to Satchel is woken up. So I guess he was asleep during all this. The house that he's at is completely intact. Was this just a dream? Maybe. We see Satchel look out the window. He still don't see Rabbi's car. And I think he's a little worried. Well, I can tell he's worried about him. And he wants to go check on Rabbi. But he stops in the hallway and talks to that guy that he was afraid of. And then the guy with the tubes. And he looks like Emperor Palpatine from, like, Rise of Skywalker is what it reminded me of. And, like, because he's like, come here, boy, and Satchel's like, I'm okay, and he's like, yeah, come close. And that one guy, they just show him, and he's like got goggles and stuff, and like I don't know what. I'm like, what is all this about? Is he like the guy that's in the Wizard of Oz at the end? That's like, and you, Dorothy, you wanted this all along, and you was a. It's like, what is all this mean? Is he connected to demonic guy? We didn't see him, by the way, in this episode. I thought that was pretty cool, cause I kind of like a little break from him every now and then. It just feels like he gets a little bogged down or a little redundant having him pop back up all the time. So we had a break with him, and from everyone, really. Like I said, the boy playing Satcho, Mike Milligan, he carries this episode. He is so interesting and talks more than we've ever seen him talk. And he's an interesting kid and very smart. And in some ways, I got a little scared when he picked up that gun. He grabs a gun after he talks to that guy. And like, you can tell he's like freaked out by a situation. And then he wakes up a second time. So it's like, okay, how many, like, is this a dream within dreams? Like, I'm like, when am I watching, like, Twin Peaks at the end or something with, you know, David Lynch? I don't know. A little too much on there, but that's for another review. So then, Satcho's, like, walking around when he wakes up again, and when he opened the door, like, everything was, like, in color. And it was, like, pretty trippy looking. You know, when he opened the door, see the old man, or see the guy in the room, like, it's, like, all in color, like Wizard of Oz, like, you know, cut to, so he's, like, he wants to go searching for Rabbi, and he goes through the whole house, and if I'm not mistaken, like, the second time when he wakes up, there's no one in there, or no one even around at all, and, all in the, like, he starts walking out of this Borehouse / insane asylum looking. I'm sorry, it just looks pretty weird and seems kind of awkward and crazy. So he walks out with the dog. So it's Satcho and Rabbit, you know, off to find whatever it is they're looking for. But their boarding house is intact, but everything else is like kind of like leveled around them, like this one little building where we seen like the American history book or whatever, American criminal history. We didn't see that, but we see it shows Satchel looking at this sign, the finished sign in color, saying the future's now, which reminds me of that scene with him in, you know, season 2 talking to Lou.
Sometimes the answer is so obvious you can't see it. You're looking too hard. See, we can't leave because we're the future. They're the past. The past can no more become the future than the future can become the past.
But yes, this episode was really exciting. I really enjoyed it. And, you know, I hope you guys are watching these episodes along with me. We only got one more to go. Keep watching these reviews and keep watching Fargo. And if you guys haven't already, please like and subscribe to my channel. Alright, I'll see you guys next week. Thank you guys. Bye.